Vitaly Klitschko said he would lead pro-EU protesters on the attack in the capital, Kiev, if the government refused to call snap elections. Prime Minister Mykola Azarov said compromises might be possible, but the opposition should avoid ultimatums. 2 activists were killed in clashes with police in Kiev on Wednesday. They were the first fatalities since the anti-government protests flared up in late November over Mr. Yanukovych's decision to pull out of a landmark treaty with the EU. Prosecutors confirmed they had died from gunshot wounds. Hundreds of people have been injured in the clashes, though some of the violence has been blamed on a little-known far-right group, Right Sector. Wednesday's unrest came on the day that new anti-protest laws entered into force. Parliament approved the laws last week, triggering renewed protests which spilled into violence on Sunday night. Ready to agree. On Wednesday evening, opposition leaders said the meeting with President Yanukovych had yielded no results. Speaking at a mass rally in Kiev, Mr. Klitschko said the president could end the standoff, without bloodshed, by calling early elections, but that, tomorrow, if the president does not respond, then we will go on the attack, to roars of approval from the crowd. Mr. Klitschko said police were preparing to clear demonstrators out of the main protest encampment at Maidan, or Independence Square. We must do all we can to stop them clearing us out, he told demonstrators. Another opposition leader, Arseny Yatsenyuk, said the government had 24 hours to respond to the demands, which also include the lifting of the new anti-protest laws. If this does not happen, we will march forward together. If it's a bullet to the head, then it's a bullet to the head, he declared. But the Prime Minister said opposition leaders should be more humble. The opposition leaders should move away from the language of ultimatums, Mr. Azarov said. We are ready to compromise, to agree. The opposition leaders should understand that they also bear responsibility in avoiding a civil war and bloodshed, and so does the government. Wounded in crush. Wednesday's violence began in a small area around Rushevsky Street, a road leading to government buildings close to the protest camp at Maidan. Police stormed the protesters' barricades on Rushevsky Street shortly after 8 o'clock, 6 o'clock GMT. Security forces later fell back to their positions after fierce clashes with protesters, but by the afternoon had pushed on through the barricades. Protesters again hurled petrol bombs and stones while riot police responded with stun grenades and rubber bullets, the BBC's Duncan Crawford reports. Thousands of protesters also gathered in Independence Square. There was a crush at one of the narrow entrances into the square when protesters tried to get and met protesters who were trying to get out to fight the police, our correspondent says. At least 2 ambulances were seen carrying away the wounded. Officials confirmed 2 bodies were found with bullet wounds close to the scene of the clashes. One of them is thought to be Sergei Nagoin, a 20-year-old ethnic Armenian who allegedly joined the protests in Kiev in early December. A third activist was also reported to have died from injuries sustained after falling from the top of the Dynamo football stadium. But a spokeswoman for Kiev's health department said the man had survived the fall and was being treated in the hospital. Mr. Azarov denied that the police were responsible for the deaths, saying they were not carrying live ammunition. They remain on the consciousness and responsibility of the organizers and certain participants of mass disturbances, he said. Many of the protesters have been wearing helmets and face masks in defiance of the new laws that ban the wearing of such headgear at protests. The laws also prescribe jail terms for anyone blockading public buildings and outlaw unauthorized tents in public areas. Visas revoked. The European Union said it would rethink its relationship with the Ukraine if there is a systematic violation of human rights, including shooting at peaceful demonstrators or serious attacks to the basic freedoms. The U.S. also strongly condemned the escalating situation. Increased tensions in Ukraine are a direct consequence of the Ukrainian government's failure to engage in real dialogue and the passage of anti-democratic legislation, a U.S. State Department spokeswoman said. Russia has accused the EU and U.S. of outside interference in Ukrainian affairs. The extremist part of the opposition is crudely violating the country's constitution, Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Gregory Karasin told Interfax news agency. Meanwhile, the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine said it had revoked the visas of several Ukrainians who were linked to the violence. It did not give names, but said it was considering further action against those responsible for the current violence.